Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D.
Brief.
This is the D Brief.
Go. Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And I'm Jag.
All right, and it is another Thursday episode. Every Thursday we have an in-depth conversation with somebody who's making things happen in the Detroit arts and entertainment scene. And I'm really excited this week because we have an event that has never happened here in Detroit before, and we've needed it. It is Detroit Art Week.
So logical. I don't know why we haven't before, and I'm so glad we can talk about it now.
I don't know why we haven't either, but today we have the founding director of Detroit Art Week, Amani, along with the director of strategic partnerships, Aleiya, Lindsey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Hi.
Well, welcome. Let's start here. What's Detroit Art Week?
So Detroit Art Week is a 5-day celebration of contemporary art and culture in Detroit. It's free to the public, and it's organized as a self-guided tour, which means that you can go to the website, detroitartweek.org, and you can take a look at all the different events, programs, performances, and happenings going on in the city, and just come out with your friends and family.
So talk to me a little bit about the inspiration, because you're not actually from Detroit, right?
No, I'm not from Detroit, but I am from Philadelphia, and believe it or not, both those cities have a lot of similarities. But when I moved here, I began working in the art and culture scene, and I realized that there wasn't an art week that was designed to draw an international community to Detroit just to experience art. Having worked in the art business for over 10 years, I knew about, Prospect in New Orleans and Dallas Art Fair and the Armory Show and Art Basel, not to mention all the international art fairs and cultural events that was happening. And I was starting to experience and witness all of the really strong art being made in the city. And I said, maybe we should put an annual event together. I talked to some people. Those people became our advisors, and we got to work putting it together.
So, Aleiya, let's pull you into this conversation. How did you wind up, are you a Detroiter? How did you wind up here, and how did you guys wind up doing this together?
Yeah, sure. So I was raised in Rosedale Park. I am a big Detroit. I love Detroit. I've always been involved in the arts. From projects at Cranbrook when I was a child to studying sculpture in undergrad. And I came back to Detroit in 2011. And Amani and I met after, I had spent so many years in the art scene. And Amani and I met, and we were talking about this project. And it just seemed like such a great fit for what I was interested in. So... I'm the director of strategic partnerships. So.
Which means you're the one who has to go get this thing funded, right?
Right.
Is
bring in the monies.
That's your role?
And finding where the party is.
Oh,
yeah, right.
Oh, then
that's also strategic.
Who can host the shindigs? Yeah.
Sure.
Wait, let me ask you this, because I came here in 2011, left in 2013, came back in 2016, and the change was monumental.
Drastic.
So how long were you away, and did you know how much of a change did you notice, first of all, when you came back to town, and then since?
And not just in town, but also is that reflected in the art scene here?
Right. I think growing up here obviously was I was in a completely different space. Mm-hmm. But coming back in 2011 was really interesting because a lot of people were here for different programs, different art-related programs and projects, and it seemed as though everyone I met had either a really cool studio or a really interesting project they were working on. Everyone was a lot younger then and more adventurous. So coming back into a space where a really young person could kind of embark on their own and take on a really cool project was just something totally different from, growing up and going to high school and,
Right.
I feel like something I hear again and again is that Detroit gives you the space to create and also the ability to live within a normal means. So you're not working so hard just to pay your bills, that you have a little bit more freedom to pursue your art. And I hear that time and time again. In fact, I just was talking to another artist that moved from San Francisco. Same thing. He's like, I have a day off here. Like, I don't have to be hustling every single minute. So
it's more affordable here than, say, New York or Chicago, or right? I mean, is it easier to be an artist here?
Now, obviously, the cost of living is changing as Detroit is getting more popular.
Right.
But surely in 2011, before people, were really investing in Detroit, it was a space, where people could live and not have to pay a ton of money for rent.
Right.
'Cause that's what it comes down to. How much is rent, and that's kind of like the fundamental
right.
thing.
And I do worry about what's going to happen, even with like Ford buying the train station. That's obviously awesome. But there's so many creative DJs, artists, young people that live in Corktown that live pretty, affordably, that I wonder how that's all going to work itself out. So
the hope is that the economy gets healthier, especially for artists. The art economy gets healthier, more collectors and people that are willing to invest in true, authentic art.
What are the factors that drive that? I mean, when you say collectors willing to invest, are we talking about rich people who care about art moving in, or what do we really mean?
Or is it tied to the general economy with the ups and downs of that?
I mean, first I want to say I think that being an artist, the trade-off of having that kind of freedom, the freedom and capacity to express yourself, means that you're going to lose some stability.
Yeah.
Right. That's just
Absolutely.
part of the game. You can't. Some artists can rise to that point where they can make a lot of money, become really rich, and take care of their families and do the things they want to do. But most artists, that is the trade-off. And
It's like being a radio DJ, right, Seth?
Yeah.
or a podcast host. Yeah.
Yeah, more like a podcast host. Yeah. There's more stability.
But that's very true.
So thinking about Corktown and Ford going in and buying the train station, my sense when I first moved here and I would see the way things were, like when WeWork came and all these different things, I was like, that's going to be a problem for the creative community,
Right.
because there's sort of like a rhythm, right? It's like an area becomes desolate, right? Artists move in because they can live on the cheap and make things, right? And then slowly those neighborhoods become desirable by developers.
Right.
And then it's the developers who drive the demand for the spaces. And then suddenly the artists, they can't live there anymore and they have to move on. So it's a transient kind of lifestyle. And I think for most artists, they don't love that grind, but they're not going to go and work in an office.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Their passion is still their passion.
They're going to figure it out. It's like if you have a studio, enjoy your studio, because if it's in a building where you're not paying rent or low rent and then, a fancy bar opens up, the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. And I think that that needs to be said when you're talking about communities and the place art has within those communities. It is for the most part temporal.
Sure.
Is there any connection between the type of art that we're talking about here and the health or vibrancy of a performing arts scene, whether it's theater or music or things like that, or are they largely independent?
They're largely independent. You'll have, I think, performance art. You'll see a crossover into theater or sort of performative artistic practices. But for the most part, you've got your writers, they hang out at this bar, your painters hang out here, your sculptors hang out here, your photographers. The art scene is very, very fragmented in terms of like the practices, but there are interdisciplinary practices and where people come together around the presentation of art. But generally speaking, it's like, oh, I went to this program for sculpture. You probably mostly hang out with people who are sculptors. Right?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So is Jack White coming to Detroit Art Week? That's what we want to know.
Well, yes. Okay.
We found Jack White.
Yes.
He's finally coming home.
Maybe,
Interesting you say that.
maybe not Jack White per se, but and I think that I'll let Aleiya jump in on this in a second. But I think that what's important is what's going to drive the growth of Detroit Art Week is not going to be the art on its own.
Correct.
Like
Yeah.
Art Basel in Miami is like, there's all of the brands and the this and
It's
the that,
the whole program.
and that drives the attendance. So the first year, it's all about we really want to focus on the art, and that will always be our focus. But each year, we want to bring in high level entertainment that's relevant to the art community, because it's not like because you're a painter that you don't listen to music.
Of course.
Right. You don't go out and party, right? So it's finding popular acts that can drive people internationally they come for the performance, but they stay for the art
And
or for the food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of musicians that exist in the art space. I can think of, like, in the New York art scene, I can think of a couple artists that you might see at a gallery opening, or you might see, at some art event, and their music and their stage performance is very much related to performance art and contemporary art practices. So I think in the coming years, it will be interesting to see musicians and artists that kind of are in that art space.
Is there you talk about growing it, getting big artists and that sort of stuff. Is corporate sponsorships almost a part of it? You want to get big companies involved, or is that something you want to stay away from because you feel like it might be a negative for the art?
I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation with anyone once. That's my thing.
Sure.
To talk about ideas, right?
Mm-hmm. And I see Aleiya shaking her head.
She's like, I might not be
drinking my water.
Obviously, we want to be responsible, and we want to be sensitive to the current, social climate.
Sure.
That goes without saying. But I feel like as a director, it is my job to at least hear people out.
Okay.
If someone says, hey, we like what you're doing, and we want to invest in your ideas so we can help you take it to the next level, I'm going to listen to that person and see if it's a fit. I will say this, though. The first year, we did it on our own.
Right.
Because we wanted to demonstrate that maybe we don't grow it. Maybe it grows organically over time. Maybe it just stays like
Almost
this.
so you're not beholden to any kind of corporate sponsor kind of thing?
Absolutely. Because when those corporate sponsorship conversations start to happen, I want us to have leverage and be able to say, well, this is what we're bringing to the table.
Right.
And if we're going to do this, this is how we do it, or we don't really do it at all. One of the things that I love is I did a party for a client in Miami, and the sponsor was Louis Vuitton.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it was a big party. It was like top 5 parties in my life, and trust me, I've been to and thrown.
New York and Miami, I'd imagine.
It was a great
That
party.
would be number one
It was a great
in my
party.
life by like far.
It was a top 5 experience, and I was working.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I
You
wasn't
weren't
a
even a
guest.
guest.
I was working. I was like, this is amazing. And Louis Vuitton, they gave a lot of money, and at the bottom of the invitation, it just said Louis Vuitton. That's it.
That's the only
There was
exposure.
no signage. There was no nothing.
Wow.
That was it. But if Louis Vuitton comes to you, they already see you as an equal, and
Right.
they understand that for a partnership to work, you can't start bringing banners out all over the place.
You've got to stay true to your brand.
You got to stay true to your brand. And also, too, I think because we work in the arts, it's like if, Chase Bank, shout out to Chase, if Chase came to us and they were like, hey, we want a title sponsor, the first thing I'm going to say is, well, how can we make it unlike any other sponsorship you've ever done? How can we do it differently? How can we finance some artist studios? How can we really put some money in people's pockets?
It's not
what can
Detroit
we
Art
do?
Week presented by Chase.
Right. How can we do this in a way that is beneficial to the community, and we're open and transparent about that? Not like, oh wow, they got a Chase sponsorship,
Right,
and it's
like,
like,
what's that mean?
we don't really see the effects in the community that we aim to serve, right?
So speaking of that, what are your ultimate goals for this art week? What do you want to see as a result?
I mean, do you mean for this first year?
Yeah.
I just want to get the first year done.
Okay, just get it off my desk. Just make it happen.
We're 10 days out. I just want to get the first year.
He wants to be
done.
alive on July 23rd.
Yes,
And
exactly.
reflect. I think bigger picture. I always say this. I want to be bigger than movement. I want because that's like for events, that's the top dog here, right?
It is.
So it's like we want to surpass those numbers.
So let me ask you about 2 of the artists that you're honoring this year, Carol Harris and Ali McGee.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about them as artists.
So Carol Harris and Ali McGee, they're born and raised in Detroit. They've been living and working here, making art for about 50 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, right? So when I met Carol, I was like, whoa, this is, you have this interesting practice, abstract. She makes these abstract quilts that look like abstract paintings. They're not functional. They don't look like actual quilts. They're small scale, large scale. They're very dynamic. They're full of color. It's muted colors. It's stitching. It's cutting. It's sewing. It's rusting fabric. I mean, it's really taking all sorts of aesthetic inspiration and creating these quotes. And when I went to her show, I was like, this is really amazing. She was very prolific. There was just, decades worth of work. So I was like, if we're going to do Detroit Art Week in a city that is 85% Black, it's important that we set the tone right away, that the foundation of Detroit Art Week was built a long time ago.
Absolutely.
By people like Carol Harris and Aleiya McGee. They live here, they stayed here, they worked here, they raised their families here. And I wanted to send a message to visitors that when you come into the city, you're going to immediately, because the first day is all about Carol and Aleiya, you're gonna acknowledge that this is the foundation of Detroit Art Week right away. And then the next day we can get into all the other crazy, the kids, essentially, like all the fun stuff, right? So with Ali, it's a similar story. Abstract painter. He has a really the way in which he paints. He's very prolific, but the way in which he paints is he's influenced. He's sort of trying to take the larger world from a scientific, universal,
high level kind of.
Just like, I don't want to say like moon and the stars or anything like that, but he's taking inspiration from that space, and he's creating paintings. And he's not a typical painter where he just uses like a regular brush. He mostly paints with sticks. And I think what ties them together, I don't want to give too much away because I want people to go see the show on July 20th at 6:00 at the DIA. What I think is important is that the two of them have this really rigorous, abstract, expressionistic practice that I feel like is very much rooted in a Black experience coming out of Detroit, and art history isn't talking about that. So when you do a show like that, you have to do it in the museum so that particular aesthetic can be recognized. You have sort of a classic abstract painter, and then you have someone who's making abstract quotes using the same kind of language, which they both have developed on their own without the influence of, other particular art movements, right? It's like they've kind of built it on their own just by doing it over and over and over again. So that was important to me to highlight them. So the show is called Rhythm, Repetition, and Vocab, because there's a rhythmic way in which they work. There's a repetitive way in which they work, which is where the craftsmanship really shows. And then it's that vocabulary that they've created over time. 50 years of putting in the work. So we have to celebrate them, and that's why we went in that direction.
Yeah, speaking of lifetime achievement, I mean, that's the real deal.
It's the real deal.
So I know you've got things going on all over the city, and even outside the city. I mean, let's take it neighborhood by neighborhood. Let's start with downtown. What's going on during Detroit Art Week downtown?
So downtown, so the way it works is the galleries are going to be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Most galleries are not open on Sunday.
No.
So they're going to open an extra day. So anyone can go to those galleries and just see shows, right? It doesn't have to, it can be in any of the, I think it's 5 or 6 neighborhoods we're in. It can be any neighborhood. But downtown Detroit specifically, there's a show by an artist named Mario Moore at David Klein Gallery. And then there's a group show called, I think, Exerscape at Library Street Collective. So those are like the two sort of proper downtown galleries that we're working with. So you can go to one, you can go to other, but then you can also, what else is down there? You can go to Detroit Blows, you can go to the 10, you can go to any of the restaurants, prime and proper. So it's like you can craft it in a way where you can say, all right, we're going to go here, here, here. We're going to jump in Uber, or jump in the car, or take the Q line, or do whatever. and hit all these other different neighborhoods. So you can do everything in one day if you have the capacity.
The stamina.
But it's really
That'd be tough,
It's
yeah.
it's really set up so that you can spend time in Detroit. So let's say you live in Ann Arbor. It's like book a hotel and put your feet up,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
get your tennis shoes on, and hit
Hit
it.
the ground.
And what's it going to cost to get in?
It's free.
That's the important part.
Everything is. There are only 2 events that cost money. One is a dinner that we're having on Friday night at Flowers of Vietnam, which is pretty much sold out. That's ticketed, and then there is a ticketed fundraiser we're doing for Detroit Cristo Rey High School at the Stanley Kresge Estate in Arden Park, featuring Wajid, Black Noise, and Beige. These are DJs. Those are the only 2 ticketed events. Everything else is free. But let's say you want to go to a studio visit, meaning you want to go into an artist's studio and hear him or her talk about their work. You have to RSVP for that, but you're pretty much guaranteed entry if you do it before the cutoff. There's a max capacity at each space. But I mean, this is not a thing that you can ordinarily do. You can't just go into an artist studio and hang out and drink beer at 2:00 in the afternoon and hear the art. That's not a thing, right? So we're making it open and accessible to people because we want them to walk away from that experience and say, okay, I'm going to come down for all of the shows that go on. We're going to make this a part of what, a part of my lifestyle, not just like going to the museum once every 6 months.
Well, I think that's important to the accessibility. Just you open the door. It's not that people don't want to go in. They just don't know how. They don't know where. They don't know if they're welcome. They don't know. There's still this intimidation of like, how do I even approach this kind of world? So I think when you make it free, you make like, this is okay, you can do this. You're going to create this whole new sort of group of art aficionados.
I think that's important because, like
Yeah.
you said, Becky, because people, you go, what do I want to go do downtown? There's so much happening in Detroit now. Oh, money's kind of tight this week. I don't want to. This is an event. It's not going to cost you anything, and you get exposed to so much. Is what I love about it.
Right.
Well, and so many people are attracted to things. Like I was just downtown today, so you all know I'm a tour guide, so I do this for a living too. But Ross and Crow, she's got some pieces in the belt, So people walk by and they say, oh my gosh, that's beautiful, the cactus, this glowing desert or whatever, but they don't know who painted it or that she's represented by Library Street Collective, that the big show, So when you just start to put the pieces together for people, it just means so much more than, oh, that's a pretty painting. Mm-hmm. So.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We also have some really fun stuff. You want to talk about the... Okay.
She's shaking her head now.
Come on.
Sure.
She will.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the JBF.
So this is exciting. When we announced Detroit Art Week, the community was really on board, which is, this is our first year, and we're really thankful for the kind of support we've been getting from different bars and restaurants and cultural institutions. One of our really exciting collaborations is with Eastern Market Brewing Company.
We love those
We
guys.
had those guys on the podcast.
Yeah, they're
Shout
great
out
guys.
to Dane.
Yes.
Yeah, they're really great. So one of our favorite artists is James Benjamin Franklin. And he has been a painter for a really long time, and his work has moved into kind of a more sculptural space. So we are doing a collaboration with Eastern Market Brewing Company and James Benjamin Franklin. So we're releasing a beer that will be available at Eastern Market Brewing Company. It will also be available at some of the different galleries. We have a couple relationships with restaurants, and it should be available there.
What's it called?
It's called James Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, love it.
Love it. Oh, that's great.
I
Do you
love
know
it.
what type of beer it is? Because now Seth and I have got
Yeah,
our
all
ears
right.
perked up.
Now we
so
have
it's
to
a
know.
hazy. It's a hazy beer.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
All
and,
right.
and keeping up with all things contemporary. It's a kind of contemporary beer.
Well, and of course, all your partners are excited about it. Like, people want this. It's just, quite frankly, a pain to put it together.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
So kudos to you, because it's a logistical, organizational, really huge chunk to take on.
It's a new muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that with the partnership with Eastern Market Brewing Company, is that it kind of shows the diversity and ways in which we can move and develop partnerships in the future. It's not, it's Detroit Art Week. The focus is on contemporary art and celebrating the art here. But we all like to eat, drink, hang out, go to the spa, So
enhances all the senses.
We want to incorporate all of that into the week, and we'll just keep building that as
And they're also a young business. They're
they want to get
they've been around a
exposure
year now, maybe.
Yeah, a year and a half.
Right.
Another young business that we're excited about is Siren Hotel.
Oh, great.
yeah.
They were very generous in the beginning when this project was just a seedling, and they'll be hosting our journalists that are coming in town for Detroit Art Week. An artist.
What a great place to stay.
Yeah.
Now, do you find it's easier in Detroit than maybe other places you've been to organize this kind of thing? Like, is it sort of more collaborative?
I mean, in New York, everyone's got their own thing, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's like really focused, and you collaborate, but it is a struggle to get people's time.
Like an every man for himself kind of thing.
It can be that, and it can also just be like, I'm just really not around. I'm too busy doing so many other things. So I think that the two cities are similar in the sense that the good people are busy. And if you want to work with the good people, the people who are doing great things, they're going to be busy. I think that in New York, because it's so many things going on, there's so many cultural events. Something like this wouldn't really make sense there.
Yeah, wouldn't make a dent.
It wouldn't make a dent. It wouldn't make sense. You really have to figure out how to pitch it and sell it to the galleries. I mean, it would be difficult, but it wasn't easy here. I mean, there was a lot of people we had to say like, no, it's free.
Right,
you
right.
don't have
Like,
to
what's
do.
the catch?
We're not asking you for money.
You don't have
Right.
to do anything. Just like, what are you showing in July? Just send me some images.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
gonna,
And open your door.
open your door, and we're gonna put it on our website, and we're gonna promote it. So the thing that you're already doing, we just need you to do your thing.
And I think it's hard for people to see things, before they happen. This is our very first year.
Yeah, that is the hard thing.
It's very
with
hard to
events.
envision, like,
Yeah.
what's it going to be like? Yeah.
Exactly. So,
We talked about downtown and what's happening there, but this is happening in other neighborhoods as well. Talk about some of the things going on in some of the other neighborhoods.
So, let's see. So we have Bahamas Biennale is one of our favorites, and this is happening on the east side, as well as Playground Detroit and Eastern Market. We have Wasserman Projects and Cost Contemporary Art. They're a newer gallery. In Hamtramck, we're going to visit Pop's Imperium.
So walk me through some of these. Tell me about some of these galleries. I mean, because I think there may be a lot of people who aren't aware of all these different things
some
that
are
are going
new
on.
and some are old.
Yeah, one of the older galleries is Del Pryor Gallery in Midtown.
I love that.
Love Del Pryor.
Oh my gosh.
And she's been in the contemporary space for many, many years.
She's 90 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah, Del's 90. And she DJ'd a party a couple weeks ago. Yeah, she's like my hero for
What's
sure.
that commercial with DJ Grandma where people are retiring? It's kind of like
But
that.
she is way hip. She's way hip.
She's cool.
And her daughter Sharon, and yeah, they're great.
Yeah, she's very cool. MoCAD, they have the Tal R show up right now, and the paintings in the Tal R show, we first saw them before the show opened as thumbnails on the computer, but when you go to see the show, the paintings are massive, like 20 foot paintings.
Wow.
Monumental work. So, and a lot of times, like, we see work on the internet, and a lot of times we don't really get to experience art in person. And sometimes it's completely encompassing and can just really change
It's different. We were just talking about this with stand-up comedy. We were
talking about this earlier in the week, yeah.
Yes.
how
Yeah.
watching something on
Netflix
Netflix
special.
is not the same as going and seeing stand-up comedy in a club, and it's the same thing
Yeah.
with art, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
you
And I don't think enough people understand that. Like to be in a room with a giant painting,
Right.
is you
Huge.
can't replicate that on a
Not at all.
website.
It's kind of a religious experience.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
if you're not like a religious person.
It's spiritual.
So
yeah.
the way we organized it was we wanted to make sure that people were going out into the neighborhoods and seeing as much as they can, that there was some diversity. That was the thing for me that was really important in founding this, was that like, okay, what I was most excited about was how diverse the art scene was here. You know, I'm coming from a
good.
place that was very, commercially focused, right?
Mm.
So coming here, it was like you've got your traditional galleries, you've got your avant-garde galleries, you've got galleries that operate more like institutions in terms of the shows. Then you've got the artist-run spaces that also double as artist residencies. They're bringing in people from all over the world to make art. So it's just it's so unique and expansive. I felt like it would be a good idea to say, okay, on the east side, there's Bahamas, there's Wasserman, there's Cost, there's Playground. Those are 4 galleries that we love, that we think you should see. In Southwest, there's What Pipeline and Holding House. In Midtown, which might be galleries people are a bit more familiar with, like, Mnamdi, MoCAD, the DIA, Gallery Camille, Simone de Sousa. These are all very different programs. And I feel like the way art is here is kind of like how rap was in the 90s, where every single album was its own unique, distinct
Yeah.
body of work. There wasn't
true.
a lot of copy. Everyone literally had a different sound until about the late 90s.
That's a great analogy.
Right?
Yeah, that's
Detroit
true.
art scene is kind of like that. Everyone's kind of got their own individual album.
Yeah, so what a feast. I
Right.
mean, this is great.
So if I want the Chubb Rock of contemporary art, where do I go for that?
Oh, well, that's like that's like fun hip hop. I would go to Playground Detroit for the Chubb
that seems like a
for the
saint-
Chubb
yeah,
Rock vibe.
I'd agree with that.
That's another one. I like this actually.
Yeah.
All right,
this all day.
so if I want the Boogie Down Productions,
That's serious. So you probably I would go. That's serious. I would go Simone de Sousa if you want that like institutional gallery. We're talking about galleries,
Yeah, yeah.
institutional feel. I would
polish.
because I mean she did the whole Cast Corridor. She did three series of Cast Corridor artists from the 70s. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what museums do. She did it in a gallery.
gallery.
So that would be, I don't know, who's your Boogie Down? We'll be talking about top 5 albums in
Right.
about
I
5
know,
I know,
right.
seriously. We need another
I
episode.
love how both
I
of
need
you
a-
are just looking at each other, trying to like
Yeah,
figure out.
thinking about-
Okay,
thinking
why
about
don't you
this.
throw one at us instead of us throwing an artist at you? Why don't you throw a metaphor to us?
yeah, how about
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it open ended. See if there's a comparison you can draw.
wait? Do I have to pick a hip hop act here?
No,
How does this work?
let's have them
okay.
pick one.
If you guys were in the world of podcasts,
Yes.
if you were a pop album from the mid 2000s,
Ooh,
what would you be?
the mid 2000s.
I feel like this is a speed dating question.
Yeah, right. Yipes. That's your
just happened.
expertise.
Oh, jeez.
See,
This is what I was. See, Seth was a rock DJ. I was a top 40
right.
DJ.
Yeah, he was
so,
the
so,
pop.
so maybe
Okay.
maybe
This
like
is
the
you.
Killers.
The
Oh,
Killers,
no,
yeah.
I was crazy about the
Or
Killers.
the
Mr. Brightside?
Or Muse.
Oh, see, I wasn't. Yeah, jeez. Let me get back to you on that one.
All right, we'll get
See,
back
it's
to it.
hard.
Right.
It is
It's
kind of
hard.
hard because
Right.
we just think we're so unique. Like we don't fit any mold.
I guess it'd have to be a Detroit band. I guess a Detroit pop band from the. So it'd have to be like a.
As long as
What does that leave us with? Kid Rock or
I was gonna
White
say,
Stripes?
yeah, White Stripes.
Maybe an Eminem.
I'm trying to think of like the mid to late 2000s. Like, please don't give me like Soldier Boy or something like that.
It's,
I like White Stripes.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll leave it at that,
We'll leave
yeah.
it at that.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask for people who may be intimidated by this. This may be something new to them in terms of contemporary art. What advice do you have for them? How should they
tackle
approach
it?
this? Yeah. How
Yeah.
do you get into this if it's your first time?
I think you look at the website, the DetroitArtWeek.org.
It's very nicely organized. I
Thank
must
you.
say. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was
Thank
just
you.
looking at it.
You go to the website and you just explore the website and allow yourself to be curious. And the first thing I learned about art criticism, the very first thing is that art criticism is what you see in a work.
Right.
That's it. That's it. Oh, I see 2 eyes and a nose. Like that is the beginning of critiquing a work of art. So I think that if a thumbnail, if you're drawn to a thumbnail, just go to the gallery. They're waiting for you. They're expecting you to come.
Yeah, and I think there's a perception that you have to speak a certain way or have a certain language, and that's so not true. It's just such a visceral, authentic, personalized experience.
It's almost like any festival you would go to, from what you're saying, is, okay, if I was to go to a music festival, I'm going to go to the website and say, okay, I want to see these 3 or 4 artists. It's almost the exact same thing.
It's the same thing. But you don't have to buy a ticket.
No.
That's the best part.
Right. You can just...
And you don't have to pretend you're something.
You don't even have to talk to people. You can just walk in and walk out.
That's so true.
That's perfect for Seth.
Seth doesn't like people that much. So.
The challenge is to find something you like. You might like everything. You might not be interested in anything, but at least you're thinking in a different space.
Well, and I also like this concept of making a day or an evening of it and going and finding a restaurant and making this part of an overall experience in a neighborhood.
And kind of creating a roadmap for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why we created we have a lifestyle tab on the tab, link, whatever, on the website that organized by neighborhood. So if you're in Hamtramck, it's going to show you where you can see art and eat in Hamtramck, so you're not just like in Hamtramck, like, oh, where do I go? It's like, oh,
I'm hungry. I'm right on the website.
Go to Yemen Cafe.
It's right here. You can go to Yemen Cafe. You can do this. You can do that. So this is the first year. It's an experiment, right? We don't know what this thing is going to look like. We'll know on the 23rd, and we'll tweak, and then in 2019, we'll just every year.
Yeah.
Can we have you back then?
Yeah, we'll have
let's
to
keep doing it.
Let's make it a tradition.
Detroit Art Week is coming up July 20th through the 22nd. People can find all the details over at the website, DetroitArtWeek.org. Amani, Olu, and Aleiya, Lindsey, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for, I know how much
Doing
work
this.
goes into an event like this. So good luck with your first one. We can't wait till it's...
Can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah, we'll be
absolutely.
there.
So we'll be there.
Happy to support it.
Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you. Thank you.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.